O Pioneers, Chapter 4, Part 1. For the first 3 years after John Bergson's death, the affairs of his family prospered. Then came the hard times that brought everyone on the divide to the brink of despair. 3 years of drought and failure, the last struggle of a wild soil against the encroaching plowshare. The first of these fruitless summers the Bergson boys bore courageously. The failure of the corn crop made labor cheap. Lou and Oscar hired 2 men and put in bigger crops than ever before. They lost everything they spent. The whole country was discouraged. Farmers who were already in debt had to give up their land. A few foreclosures demoralized the country. The settlers set about on the wooden sidewalks in the little town and told each other that the country was never meant for men to live in. The thing to do was to get back to Iowa, to Illinois, to any place that had been proved habitable. The Bergson boys certainly would have been happier with their Uncle Otto in the bakery shop in Chicago. Like most of their neighbors, they were meant to follow in paths already marked out for them, not to break trails in a new country. A steady job, a few holidays, nothing to think about, and they would have been very happy. It was no fault of theirs that they had been dragged into the wilderness when they were little boys. A pioneer should have imagination, should be able to enjoy the idea of things more than the things themselves. The second of these barren summers was passing. One September afternoon, Alexandra had gone over to the garden across the draw to dig sweet potatoes. They had been thriving upon the weather that was fatal to everything else. But when Carl Lindstrom came up the garden rows to find her, she was not working. She was standing lost in thought, leaning upon her pitchfork, her sunbonnet lying beside her on the ground. The dry garden patch smelled of drying vines and was strewn with yellow seed cucumbers and pumpkins and citrons. At one end, next to the rhubarb, grew feathery asparagus with red berries. Down the middle of the garden was a row of gooseberry and currant bushes. A few tough zinnias and marigolds and a row of scarlet sage bore witness to the buckets of water that Mrs. Bergson had carried there after sundown against the prohibition of her sons. Carl came quickly and slowly up the garden path, looking intently at Alexandra. She did not hear him. She was standing perfectly still, with that serious ease so characteristic of her. Her thick reddish braids, twisted about her head, fairly burned in the sunlight. The air was cool enough to make the warm sun pleasant on one's back and shoulders, and so clear that the eye could follow a hawk up and up into the blazing blue depths of the sky. Even Carl, never a very cheerful boy, and considerably darkened by these last 2 bitter years, loved the country on days like this, felt something strong and young and wild come out of it. That laughed at care. "Alexandra," he said as he approached her, "I want to talk to you. Let's sit down by the gooseberry bushes." He picked up her sack of potatoes and they crossed the garden. "Boys gone to town?" he asked as he sunk down on the warm, sun-baked earth. "Well, we have made up our minds at last, Alexandra. We are really going away." She looked at him as if she were a little frightened. "Really, Carl? Is it settled?" "Yes, Father has heard from St. Louis, and they will give him back his old job in the cigar factory. He must be there by the 1st of November. They are taking on new men then. We will sell the place for whatever we can get and auction the stock. We haven't enough to ship. I am going to learn engraving with a German engraver there, and then try to get work in Chicago." Alexandra's hands dropped in her lap. Her eyes became dreamy and filled with tears. Carl's sensitive lower lip trembled. He scratched in the soft earth beside him with a stick. "That's all I hate about it. Alexandra, he said slowly. You've stood by us through so much and helped Father out so many times, and now it seems as if we were running off and leaving you to face the worst of it. But it isn't as if we could really ever be of any help to you. We are only one more drag, one more thing you look out for and feel responsible for. Father was never meant for a farmer, you know that, and I hate it. We'd only get in deeper and deeper. Yes, yes, Carl, I know. You are wasting your life here. You are able to do much better things. You are nearly 19 now, and I wouldn't have you stay. I've always hoped you would get away, but I can't help feeling scared when I think how I will miss you more than you will ever know. She brushed the tears from her cheeks, not trying to hide them. But Alexandra, he said sadly and wistfully, I've never been any real help to you, beyond sometimes trying to keep the boys in a good humor. Alexandra smiled and shook her head. Oh, it's not that. Nothing like that. It's by understanding me and the boys and Mother that you've helped me. I expect that is the only way one person ever really can help another. I think you are about the only one that ever helped me. Somehow it will take more courage to bear your going than everything that has happened here before. Carl looked at the ground. You see, we've all depended so on you, he said. Even Father. He makes me laugh. When anything comes up, he always says, I wonder what the Bergsons are going to do about that. I guess I'll go and ask her. I'll never forget that time when we first came here and our horse had the colic and I ran over to your place. Your father was away and you came home with me and showed Father how to let the wind out of the horse. You were only a little girl then, but you knew ever so much more about farm work than poor Father. You remember how homesick I used to get and what long talks we used to have coming from school? We've some way always felt alike about things. Yes, that's it. We've liked the same things and we've liked them together, without anybody else knowing. And we've had good times, hunting for Christmas trees and going for ducks and making our plum wine together every year. We've never either of us had any other close friend. And now, Alexandra wiped her eyes from the corner of her apron, and now I must remember that you are going where you will have many friends and will find the work you were meant to do. But you'll write to me, Carl. That will mean a great deal to me here. I'll write as long as I live, cried the boy impetuously, and I'll be working for you as much as for myself, Alexandra. I want to do something you'll like and be proud of. I'm a fool here, but I know I can do something. He sat up and frowned at the red grass. Alexandra sighed. How discouraged the boys will be when they hear. They always come home from town discouraged anyway. So many people are trying to leave the country, and they talk to our boys and make them low-spirited. I'm afraid they are beginning to feel hard toward me because I won't listen to any talk about going. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting tired of standing up for this country. I won't tell the boys yet, if you'd rather not. Oh, I'll tell them myself tonight when they come home. They'll be talking wild anyway, and no good comes of keeping bad news. It's all harder on them than it is on me. Lou wants to get married, poor boy, and he can't until times are better. See, there goes the sun, Carl. I must be getting back. Mother will want her potatoes. It's chilly already, the moment the light goes. Alexandra rose and looked about. A golden afterglow throbbed in the west, but the country already looked empty and mournful. A dark moving mass came over the western hill. The Lee boy was bringing in the herd from the other half section. Emile ran from the windmill to open the corral gate. From the log house on the little rise across the draw, the smoke was curling. The cattle lowed and bellowed. In the sky, the pale half-moon was slowly silvering. Alexandra and Carl walked together down the potato rows. I have to keep telling myself what is going to happen, she said softly. Since you have been here 10 years now, I have never really been lonely, but I can remember what it was like before. Now I shall have nobody but Emile, but he is my boy, and he is tender-hearted.